And the big news announced tonight that South Africa will be moving to level 1 of the lockdown, and that is from midnight on Sunday. So talking about how infections have come right down, and it's time now to open up the economic activity, the social activity, almost the president hinting at getting back to life before COVID-19. And Griselda and I will just take you through some of the finer points of what lockdown level 1 means. Firstly, there will be gatherings allowed, so this no longer, the cap of 50 no longer applies. It's more about how much the venues can accommodate, Griselda. So most venues will be allowed to accommodate 50% of their capacity. There is a maximum of 250 for indoor events, 500 for outdoor events. And this, of course, was about not letting there be super spreader events where you have huge gatherings. Those still not allowed, and funerals a max of 100. Griselda.
That's right, Francis. The president indicating that, of course, that is one of those areas that is considered one of the high spreaders. Funerals moving from 50 people to 100 people. So travel may also be restricted to and from certain countries that are deemed high risk. Now, all of this international travel to and from the 1st of October only, and these are 3 airports only open for international flights. It will be King Shaka International Airport, OR Tambo International Airport, as well as Cape Town International Airport. And on arrival, you will need to present a negative COVID-19 test result, which is not older than 72 hours. That's very important. And I guess, Francis, this is something that's going to have to be communicated to those in particular coming into the country, that the document which you carry, which should indicate a negative COVID result, should be no more than 72 hours. If that time has lapsed or you don't have that document, you will then have to go into quarantine. And I guess South Africa, in this particular instance, not trying to import, in particular from countries that are considered very high risk at this time. All travellers, Francis, will still be screened on arrival, and those presenting with symptoms will be required to get a COVID-19 test. And most importantly, Francis, the COVID-19 app. I've downloaded that as well, Francis, and starting to pick up that it does work, because if somebody then does indicate that they've tested positive for the coronavirus, if you come within close proximity of that person, it will tell you that that is indeed the case. So the president certainly urging a lot of people to download that, and especially now, Francis, well, you'll have not just South Africans, international travellers. There'll be a lot of mixing, Francis, so that's going to be quite crucial.
Yeah, so he sounded very tech-savvy tonight, saying download it. This is a zero-rated app, so you won't be charged for the data. Just quickly running through some of the finer points. The curfew remains in place, but the hours have changed. So there will still be a curfew from midnight until 4 o'clock. And then we've been talking about the economy tonight, Griselda, and lots of speculation that we could have heard some of the details of this new economic recovery plan, which he did touch on, and it now has a name, a recovery, reconstruction and recovery plan. He again said this is a milestone for South Africa, but giving no details tonight. We are hearing from sources that this was held up in cabinet. Remember, it's been through where government, business and labour meet. But this had to go through cabinet, and maybe not enough time for cabinet to agree. He said that will be finalised in coming weeks. We'll speak to some analysts. Is this good enough? Because it's 6 months after the first lockdown, remember, with huge economic fallout. He does say that the stimulus plan announced earlier has helped millions of South Africans, and just talking about how some people have benefited from that, but no details on the new recovery and reconstruction plan, as it's called, Griselda.
Yeah, the UIF benefit as well also extended to the end of the state of disaster. That's on October the 15th. The president also indicating that over 30 billion has been paid to more than 16 million individuals through the special COVID-19 grant and top-ups to existing grants. But Francis, as you speak of the economy, one of the sectors that was quite hard hit by the lockdown in South Africa, of is the tourism sector. Let's be joined now by tourism consultant Gillian Saunders. She's on the line with us. Gillian, very good evening to you. Thanks indeed for your time. Good news certainly for your sector from the 1st of October. Those international flights might be coming in. This is all for business and leisure as well. Your response to the President's address tonight?
Yes, Francis, it's certainly good news and we're very pleased. And I would say we cautiously optimistic. I mean, there's a couple of things we still need to know, but he's given us what we were hoping for, what we'd been asking for in terms of saying, if countries are high risk, let's look carefully at those people before they can come here. But for most countries that have got similar magnitude of where the pandemic is at to us, no reason for those people not to come. We had also suggested and seen it in lots of other countries, a COVID-free test, a negative test less than 72 hours before departure. Airlines and airports around the world are facilitating that. Some of the travelers already are used to doing that. So we don't see that as an issue. So yes, we're very pleased. But we do need that list of countries as soon as possible. The airlines have been saying they need 2 weeks to get flights up and running. And if they don't know where those flights can come from, they can't get them up and running. For the inbound trade, usually bookings are a little bit longer. But what this has probably done is a lot of our hotels, our lodges and our inbound tour operators have actually got a forward book. Yeah. They held bookings for the entire season and they were holding on by the skin of their teeth to those bookings, which are multi-million, hundreds of millions of rands in value. We will start to feel that we can keep those on the books now. And probably at least from November, everybody had them on the books.
Gillian, two things. I guess communication would need to get out to those who'd want to be travelling to South Africa about the COVID-19 test that is not more than 72 hours prior to them coming into South Africa. And of course, if that does not exist or if they don't have that, they need to be told that they will then need to go into quarantine. And also the other aspect of ensuring that while people go out now and while there be a lot of mixing between locals and international tourists, I guess, safety measures are going to be very key in the tourism sector.
The safety measures are absolutely key, but at the same as we all practice day to day now, we have our temperature taken at different places, we do sanitizing, we do distancing, and those exact same behaviors that we practice, whether we're tourists in our own country at the moment or not, are exactly the same as the foreign tourists will do. So there's no real difference. There's no real difference in risk because we also know that this virus is actually amongst us in our population, and it may well be amongst some of the foreign tourists who come in. Actually, they allow us to let ourselves or foreign tourists travel around and minimize the COVID spread risk and
all right, I'm not sure if you can still hear me there, Gillian. You wanted to continue?
I can still hear you, yes. The other thing I wanted to say is what we do have to do very quickly now is very few countries in the world actually have South Africa as a safe travel destination during pandemic times. They haven't been looking at us because they knew we were fully closed as our borders. Switzerland is a country that has just put us onto the amber or the green list as a country that their nationals can travel to. So something we have to also work on as a country, as a government, because this is in international relations, is working to get those countries, the Chinas, the Germanys, the Netherlands, the France, the UK, to say to their nationals, South Africa goes onto the green list or the amber list of countries you may travel to without repercussions on returning to that country. So that's vitally important as well.
All right, thank you very much indeed, tourism consultant Gillian Saunders, cautiously optimistic about the President's address to the nation tonight. All the best indeed to the tourism sector. Francis?
Thank you very much, Griselda. And let's talk about musicians and artists now. They were calling for support earlier, saying not much support for these industries that really have been gutted by COVID-19 and by the lockdown. And are we likely to see concerts? We still have restrictions, 250 for outdoor events, for indoor events, 500 for outdoor events. What does that mean for musicians? Let's speak to Gabrielle Leroux, the General Secretary of Trade Unions for Musicians of South Africa. Your response tonight to what the President had to say?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Firstly, let I point out that we had a very historic series of events right across the country today where the industry was unified in many of the centers. Sorry, I'm getting monitoring back in my.
All right, Mr. Leroux, I'm sorry about that. We're also getting some interference. Let me just ask the crew there to try and cut comms where possible. Stick with your train of thought, please, and give us your response to the President's address.
I'll try and communicate through that. Let's try and soldier on.
Please, for now, we're working on it.
No problem. So we had a series of events. Firstly, there was a march to the Union Building today, and we also marched at Parliament. We had a picket, and we had a historic unification of the entire arts industry across all barriers and across all art groups and many other barriers that we have in society. And in the process, we handed over a memorandum to representatives of the President. So this particular matter, the closing of the venues, was very much part of that. But it's significant for people to understand that our dilemma in our sector is not only born out of COVID. We've never had a normal industry. We've never been regulated properly. We've never had the same type of protection mechanisms, social security, and many other protection mechanisms that other occupations have in our society. So with specifically, if we look at the reopening of the venues, I want to say that, please, everybody must bear in mind, we have much bigger issues than existed before COVID-19. And those were some of the reasons why we marched and we brought that message to the President's attention. Let me focus on the specific announcement of the opening of venues to 50%. We would obviously have to study it with all our unified partners. We were about 20 organizations today. One of the things that we were campaigning for, or that we were demanding really, or strongly urging the President, is to push it to 70%. So one could argue that 50% is the way to start, but at the same time, one must remember that for performing musicians and performing artists, 50% of a venue also means a direct 50 or more % cut of their taking on any given night's performance, whether it be covered, crowd.
It's also about the atmosphere, surely, but we're running out of time. I want to throw in something. Is it time for artists to be creative? Overseas, interesting things, sort of drive-in concerts have been held, because some are saying that our habits have fundamentally changed. It'll take a while, even with no restrictions at all on government's part, for South Africans to want to venture out and go to these events where you're huddled together with other people. Is it time to start thinking differently?
No, I can say to you that I think all of us, particularly as artists, people must remember technologically we've been far ahead of many other sectors. We've been working using synthesizers and computers and technology for as long as they existed. So for us to embrace the 4IR is not a new phenomenon. But still right now, I don't think anybody in their right mind can think that we can instantly, within a few short months, replace the revenue streams generated by conventional entertainment by an online distribution model. That's just not practical to think that way. We obviously are moving in that direction, and I think COVID-19 did us a good favor to start, moving fast in that direction, challenging our own sense of creativity, etc. But we're a long way off before that will replace our conventional methods of revenue stream generation.
All right. Thank you for your time tonight. Gabriel Leroux, Secretary General of the Trade Unions for Musicians of South Africa. Griselda?
Thank you very much, Francis. Let's get some political reaction now. First, the ANC's Pule Mabe on the line. Mr. Mabe, very good evening to you. Your reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's address to the nation tonight.
Well, evening, Griselda, and evening to your viewers. Well, we do welcome the announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa to move the country to alert level 1. We must also commend the government of the people of South Africa for the sterling work that they've done over the past 6 months to make sure that they enforce public education, they educate our people to be able to fight the pandemic, encourage them to stay at home, make sure that they sanitize and wash their hands regularly, and that they wear a mask every time they go out to the public, and that they practice social distancing. All of these things have become a norm that people are beginning to practice. It shows that there is a great deal that our government has done right. But we must also commend some of the interventions that the President spoke to as it relates to the work that is being done by the scientific community to be able to participate in vaccine trials. This is a very important step of making sure that we have a long-lasting solution together with all nations of the world in fighting the pandemic. We are hopeful that as we move to alert level 1, our people will not disappoint, will not let the guard down. They will continue to do what they've done over the past few months. They will continue to assert that this new normal, this new way of doing things is a thing that South Africans can be able to practice going forward, so that 1, we can protect our economy, 2, we can protect the lives of many others in this country, 3, we can make sure that we can still have a country that will be able to all call home.
And certainly, I guess the country also needs to be quite cautious moving forward as this opens up, of course, many industries. There'll be lots more movement also in and out of South Africa. I mean, obviously, would there need to be some kind of emergency measures put in place to ensure that if there does become an increase in infections again, we're able to deal with this issue?
Well, of course. I mean, that is quite important. That's why the area of public education, our ministers, the good work that our government has done over the past few months will now need to be accelerated, because it means that there's now going to be more activity with the opening of the borders, international travel. It means that there's going to be a lot of movement in and out of the country. There's also going to be more numbers of people that are now allowed to gather internally and indoor and outdoor. So it means that we now need to be more cautious.
Right.
This doesn't mean that we are out of trouble.
Yeah.
It only means that we need to exercise maximum vigilance.
Maximum vigilance. Thank you very much indeed. ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe Francis, who do you have?
Reaction from the Democratic Alliance now, interim leader John Steenhuisen joining us. So, Mr. Steenhuisen, your response to tonight's address by the President? John Steenhuisen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being with us. I was asking for your reaction to the President's address.
Well, certainly we welcome the lifting to level 1. As we said before, this should have happened a long time ago. I think the big win this evening is the opening of international borders. Our tourism industry, which is a big employer in the country, has been completely obliterated in the last few months, and we need to get that jump-started again. The curious part of this evening is why we still have a curfew and why there's still the restrictions on liquor. It doesn't make much sense, particularly as we've gone to alert level 1. But we'll obviously be able to interrogate that over the coming weeks and months. The big question that South Africans need to be asking is, where's the economic recovery plan? That's going to be essential going forward. We are staring into the deepest depression in a generation in South Africa that's going to cut very, very deep into South Africa. The government needs a reform package and needs to get a reform package on the table as of yesterday if we're going to be able to drive those reforms through to kickstart and jumpstart the economy so that we avoid having a 51% unemployment rate and that we are able to get South Africans and South Africa working as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we're waiting for the details from that plan. We know it's on the table, but saying the President saying that still has to be finalised by Cabinet. Mr. Steenhuisen, the restrictions on gatherings have been changed. For most venues, it's 50% of the venue. How does this change things for your party that has had virtual events, lockdown events? What does this mean for the DA going forward?
Well, obviously, we've moved a lot of our stuff online on the virtual platform. We recently, fortnights ago, had a very successful policy conference that was done almost entirely online. And we'll obviously be having a hybrid elective conference at the end of October. So the lifting on the gatherings numbers will obviously help us tremendously with that particular aspect of being able to conduct that Congress.
All right, dear Interim Leader John Steenhuisen. Griselda.
Thank you very much, Francis. EFF's Vuyani Pambo now joins us. Very good evening to you, Mr. Pambo. The EFF has long been calling for the President to open up the country. Level 1 is where we're at now. Your reaction, please.
Hello?
Very good evening to you, Mr. Pambo. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Very good evening to you. Thanks indeed for your time. Well, the EFF has long been calling for the president to open up the country. Level 1 it is now. What is the EFF's response to the president's address tonight?
Well, thank you very much for having us, and good evening to the listeners and the viewers at home. The reality is that we must take heed of what the president was saying. And what is important from what he's saying is that he's now going to intensify testing, which indicates to us all that the decision to take us to level 1, in fact from level 3 to level 2, has not been based on science. It has purely been based on a political manipulation of numbers. In fact, if you recall, Griselda, that on the 1st of August, the numbers were drastically dropped. The testing was drastically dropped in preparation for a narrative that says that we are doing well with COVID-19. And the reality is that the majority of the time, in fact, from the last time that the president came onto our screen and announced the easing of the lockdown, he made sure that before the announcement, the numbers, the testing, cases, or rather the testing was decreased. But the reality is this: there is no scientific basis as to why today we're going to level 1, because there is no center.
Can I just ask you, Mr. Pambo, you're saying there's no scientific basis for the country moving to level 1. Are you saying then that South Africa should have remained on level 2? I'm not sure if I'm hearing you right.
Absolutely. I think we should have remained.
But Mr. Pambo, if I can just interject there, the EFF has long been calling for the president to open up the country. You've long been advocating for industries to open. You've long criticized the president for the manner in which he has handled the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa. It's now industries to open. What then is the problem? Science.
That is not true. The EFF has never called for the president to open up the economy. We have never called the president to ease the lockdown. In fact, if anything, we were calling for a strict lockdown regulation. If anything, we've been saying it's been manipulated and that there's no scientific basis as to why the lockdown is being eased. Right now, the president, you heard him saying that he's going to intensify testing. Why is he intensifying testing only after he has now eased the lockdown? Because if he was saying to us the testing is going to be decreased because we've been testing too much and now we can see that the numbers have gone down and there's no longer any.
Do we still have you there, Mr. Pambo? We seem to be having a bad...
Can you hear me?
Please continue, sir. Please continue.
So essentially, Griselda, he is only saying that is going to increase testing post facto. The last time we reacted to the president's easing of the lockdown to level 2, we said that these numbers are manipulated. On the eve of the president's announcement, the number of new cases is 721, a low that we have not seen. The reason why the numbers have gone down is precisely because the testing of South Africans has gone down. There has been less people who are going to our communities to test our people. We know in this country that there is a culture of people who don't seek health care, precisely because of many other reasons, such as, this dilapidated, health system. We can't even speak of a health system in South Africa. But you can't say to South Africans that the numbers have gone down when you have not been testing, when you have decreased testing. So only after you have now decided that you're taking, the lockdown, you're taking us to alert level 1, do you then say to us that you are going to increase testing? Testing should have been increased from the beginning. He promised that there are going to be field workers that are going to be sent to our communities. The lived experience is that our people have not been seeing, these field workers to test them. As a result, the numbers have gone down. The only reason the numbers went down is not because there aren't any infections. It's because there is no testing that is happening in our communities. That is the basis. And the reason why we're being taken down is because of the of a business lobby that has put the president into a corner and obviously taking more, sort of light into business as opposed to life. So we don't agree with...
We're going to have to leave it there, Mr. Pambo.
On the basis of profit. We think that this is a danger to the people of South Africa.
All right, Mr. Pambo, thank you very much indeed. Let's move on now. Francis, I understand you have the IFP